to get out of the wind here a little bit so I can share with you something that just happened that will help you. Huge tip for fishing cold water. So today I came out with all intentions on throwing a frog on top. Last night, this week has been a little bit colder, and last night for the first time, there was a rain yesterday, and then a huge cold front came through. I mean, it's like 35 degrees right now. Other than my hands being cold and the wind blowing about 20 out on the main lake, it's really not too bad. But I got hand warmers in my gloves. That'll help a lot. Hand warmers in my feet and some in my pocket. So if you're gonna come out and fish cold water, make sure you bundle up. But so what happened was, like I said, I had all intentions on fishing grass mats, and I come out here the first hour or two, and I'm not seeing a whole lot of movement on top, and something just didn't feel right. So I came to those same areas that I had been catching them previous, and I thought I could see, little pieces of bait fish kind of swirling, but underneath the surface, not right on the surface like they have been. So I'm like, well, the water temperature dropped 2 degrees pretty much overnight, and that's a pretty big drop. So what I did was, I said, well, what can I throw that's not on top in those same areas, but gets just below the surface? So I pick up a spinnerbait, and rocks tend to hold heat. So those areas that I were catching them at, I looked for the closest rock areas that had deep water nearby. And lo and behold, I pulled up on the first rock pile that I go to hit. I throw the spinnerbait, I'm winding it a couple times, and catch a 5.5 pounder, which I'll put at the end of this video. Then the same areas that I had been fishing in grass, I'm like, well, when it gets a little bit colder, first thought is they're going to slide out a little bit into that deeper grass, which, I've been fishing 1 foot to 2 feet. That water is going to cool down the fastest, so I figured they would slide out just a little bit to that submerged grass. So I pick up a rattle trap, lipless rattle trap. The one I throw is a blue gizzard shad color, 1/2 ounce red eye shad, Strike King red eye shad. I'm throwing it on 15-pound fluorocarbon, a 7.2 medium heavy rod. You can use something more parabolic, but the last one that I just caught on the rattle trap was choked. I mean, completely down his throat. I'll also show you that at the end of this, but that's just an example of how it's going to change day to day. Another good thing about the rattle trap is when the water's warmer, a lot of the bait fish or the crankbaits that you throw want to get on little wider, a wider wobbling crankbait, a 5XD, a 6XD, Series 5, they have a little bit more wide. The lipless bait is more of a really tight quivering action, and when it's cold, the bait fish, they swim more like that instead of that wide, back and forth motion. So that's how I started to catch them today. So keep in mind, if you have something in mind that you're going to do that day, you got to always let the conditions dictate it. We have high sun, we have a little bit of clouds that are moving in now, but it's a serious cold front. The water's steadily dropping. I got pretty good visibility in the water. Now, I know a lot of you are probably thinking, well, how do you throw a rattle trap in the grass? It gets caught up in everything. Well, that's the key to it, all right? I'm going to show you right now. The key is to actually let it get hung in the grass. So what I do is I throw it out. Those same areas that I'm normally fishing, I'm fishing up here near the mats, okay? What mats are left. You can see some up there by that tree. But what I did was I pulled out just a little bit to throw to the edge of it, and I let it hit the bottom, and I just do a steady, slow retrieve. And then when it gets hung up in the grass, like now, I'll pop it free. And then keep on reeling slow. That bite's gonna come most of the time after it rips free from that grass. That's exactly how I caught that last one, and you'll see it in the video. When it hit that grass and I ripped it free, then he fucking crushed it. So that's what you want to do. Cast it out, let it hit the bottom. It's not going to take very long. I'm only sitting in 2.5 foot of water. All right, start reeling. When it's hung up, then pop it free. Keep on reeling. Now there's going to be times when grass gets hung on the bait. You just got to keep trying to pop it free, and then when you get it back up here, if you still have grass on it, just, you know, rip it off, obviously. But so you're going to reel it up, still got a little bit of grass. See, so there's a little bit of green grass. Now the grass on top I noticed was brown and was dying. This grass is still alive, so that's still putting off oxygen. It's keeping a lot of the bait fish in here. The water temperature is in the low 50s, and I'd imagine that this pattern would usually keep going until that water's in the high 40s. Now this isn't to say that the frog is not going to get bit anymore. Now if we get a warm day or two, you can still throw that frog and get bit, but this is just a secondary tactic that you can do in cold water that works really well. Spring, fall, best time. I kind of lost touch with the lipless bait this year because I threw it in the early spring, and then you forget about it all year, and then, you know, that light bulb went off and said, oh, you know, lipless bait, it's perfect time of year for it. So that's what I'm doing now. Spinner bait, you can do the same thing, just kind of slow roll it. When it gets hung up in the grass, just rip it free and keep on slow rolling it. The key to these baits is you want it to get just deep enough to where you can't see it. All right, you don't want it like super high, because like I said, it doesn't seem like they want to come up and get anything. They just want it to be in their face, and they're only sitting, you know, a foot or 2 feet below the water, the top of the water. So I just wanted to share that with you guys, and hopefully that way it'll help you out on the next couple days coming out. If you get a cold front in your area, or it's cold and it drops a couple degrees, try this technique out and I guarantee you, you'll catch more fish. I'm gonna try and catch a few more on here to add them to the end of the video. My battery's getting ready to die though, so I don't know how much time I have left, but stay tuned. I'll see if I can keep this battery lasting to catch you a couple more.
At launch, on the boat coverage, and at weigh-in. One of the big things and one big selling factor for us when it comes down to the events is not only is it important as far as that on-camera boat coverage of those anglers and seeing their different personalities, seeing those fish catches, but my big belief too is a trailer weigh-in to the stage, kind of like everybody's seen at the Classic. I mean, they're right there. You talk about fan involvement, you talk about exposure for those particular anglers and their sponsors. When they pull up to that stage and they're sitting in the back of that boat, either, you know, their girlfriend, their wife, a friend, a dad, whoever pulls them up, we square them up, and from bumper to prop, their logo is out there from that 60 seconds to 120 seconds while they're weighing those fish up on stage there. And that's clear as a bell for everybody to see. So as far as that exposure goes there on that weigh-in part of it, I mean, that's going to be huge for these guys. We're also talking about different round tables. You know, certain guys are going to be running Mercury motors. Some guys will run some Yamahas. Right. We'll have a Mercury motor round table. Maybe some guys are sponsored by, you know, various other bait companies or cooler companies or apparel companies. We'll have round tables with these guys, and we'll get that media exposure for them. And this will all be documented on our website, on our social media platforms, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. So I think that combination there, you know, a lot of people always talk about TV, and TV. Honestly, for me, when it comes to watching bass fishing, and I know that this is not the safest thing, so all you kiddies, close your ears. Oh, so I'm watching this going down the road on my iPad, you know, because I'm running and gunning all the time. Don't do that out there, kids. Get home, sit on your couch, get some popcorn.
Holistically work together to come to fruition. We've had I've had 2 calls for network affiliation, you know, that will cover us, that will be more than suitable, good stand-up companies that we would be proud to be partnered with. But we're not in it to make a television show. We are gonna live stream. We are gonna put as much coverage as we can out there. Hopefully technology continues to grow, and the cost of technology continues to evolve to where it's affordable to put it in 125 boats.
Well, that's, you know, I think that's the right direction. Certainly exposure is going to be key. I'm going to ask a tough question. MLF has dropped entry fees.